this is kind of short notice from Jamie because we spoke last night and I've organized it. So what I was thinking was I'd go through a few different areas, taking into consideration the fact that you already have a business or you're just about to start a business, and have a look at what pitfalls, what to look out for, what can go wrong. So my expertise, if you will, is from 0 to about 430, 450 million. So it's kind of varied, so I can understand from when you start to when you grow to when you're really big, what the problems are. So I'm going to start off with compliance. One of the big issues you're going to face is setting up. You'll set up a structure. You might start off with an ABN registered under your name, a corporate structure, a trust structure. However you start off with, just keep in mind your business plan. It's advisable because you're following the principles of testing and measuring, you'll end up being successful. So you don't want a situation where you start off with a particular structure, like having an ABN registered under your own name, and then having to go into a corporate structure where there's a capital gains situation. Because if you're going from, for example, one entity to another entity, that can trigger what's a capital gains instance, which basically means it's like selling your business. So it's important that when you start off, you actually look at your business plan over 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and figure out what structure suits you best. When you set this stuff up, you need to be aware of it and be responsible for it. I deal with lots of business people who are really, really good at their job, but they seem to forget that the compliance component is their responsibility as well. So knowing what your ABN is, knowing what your ASIC compliance is, knowing where this paperwork exists is your responsibility. It's also important because you're setting maybe an internet business and you may have intellectual property as well as a trading component, that the setup takes into consideration that IP. Because the IP is a sellable asset and it can be structured separately so that you can take advantage of your intellectual property. To start off with, you might be selling the trading yourself, and you might have the intellectual property of, like Jamie said, 7 tips on how to have the garden of a lifetime. So you have that IP, and you're selling it through this entity. You might be working this business and getting up to 10,000 clients, and then you feel like you want to take a break. You might sell the trading component, but use the intellectual property as a royalty. Now, if you're not set up correctly, when you're just about to sell, you can lose out in a big way. So it's important to get the correct advice in conjunction with your business plan. And that business plan, in my opinion, is the key. You need to plan for everything. So don't go in there thinking, I'm going to start a business, I'll just raise an ABN, we'll run fast, we'll see what happens. Lots of people do it, and they end up with a whole big problem at the end of it. A few of the other things to kind of be mindful of, you will start using your own money. So you might gear your house. You might ask your friends for money. When you set up a corporate structure, be mindful that it's separate to you. So my company sits separate to me. If I have to put money into my company, I've loaned money as a separate individual into my company. If you don't set up those arrangements carefully, if something goes wrong, you're in trouble. So I work in liquidations. So if I get a company that's in liquidation, one of the first things the liquidator is going to look at is their balance sheet. If the director's loans are not set up correctly and they're not documented correctly, you can lose out on all the money that you put into your business. Whereas if you had a charge, you had a separate structure, you put some more thought into it, you might be able to secure something. Not that that's going to happen to you, but it's just important to know this stuff because things can go wrong quite quickly, especially when you're starting small and when you have to do it yourself. Everything's on you. So you've got to be mindful, make sure you get correct advice and set up correctly. What can go wrong? There's heaps of compliance issues, right? So you have the tax office, super issues if you've got employees, you've got the state revenue office, you've got insurance issues with work cover, then you've got state-based insurance issues, you've got state-based work cover. I mean, there's so much compliance. So the main thing to do is to get that information and to be aware of what's happening. I've got lots of certain clients who might be a good industry is construction. You get a builder who's really good at his job, and he puts aside the fact that, oh, I'm not responsible for running road crews in Queensland versus road crews in, Truganina in Victoria. It's not, how am I supposed to know this stuff? But in the end, when it goes bad, it's all on his shoulders and it's all his responsibility. So not knowing is not an excuse anymore. So it's important to get that information and get the information correctly. Good tools that I recommend: get online, start subscribing to stuff like the ATO, State Revenue Office. All of them have like a subscriber list. I just put myself on there for things that are applicable to me because I have staff in Queensland and staff in Victoria. So I may have payroll tax issues. So I make sure that for my business that's applicable. Do the same thing for whatever you think is applicable to your business. Also with things that, just be smart about how you operate. If you employ people, get a cover note. You can do it on the phone. For work cover, you can call up workers' compensation, CGU, they provide work cover insurance, get a cover note. So you're making sure that you're getting the minimum level of cover so that you can deal with it later on. Few more things. Seek advice. Every single thing, there's free advice available in Australia. My business has to deal with clients in US, in Limassol, in Cyprus, in Singapore, Vietnam, and Australia. By far, the most efficient tax revenue operating system is Australia. As in, they get the paperwork out fast, they don't lose paperwork, so you can't really dodge the system, right? It's not like Vietnam. So what you have to do is you got to understand, they're going to send you that paperwork. But if you're embarrassed to give your accountant, me, a director's penalty notice, which means that you're personally liable for a debt, because you're embarrassed thinking that I'm going to think that you've stuffed up, and I'm not, you will end up in a huge problem. So you need to get that paperwork, get it to deal with it that day. I see heaps of clients with piles of unopened letters and mail. They go, but Arj, I'm working. I'm like, dude, you're going under. That's what you're doing. Because that mail is critical. I had a client. He's a road contractor. He works for one of the biggest contractors in Melbourne. It's called Winslow. This guy has 20 employees. He got a director's penalty notice on the 21st of January. There's 11 days for me to take care of that. And I could have done something for him, but he waited till it had expired and then decided, when I called him up and said, what's going on, to send me the paperwork on, I think, about 10 days ago. And see, the ATO doesn't appreciate when you're not dealing with your own business. So the file had already left the tax office and gone to a lawyer's office. And it just makes my life much harder to help the client. So what you've got to understand is that it's his responsibility. And hand-holding doesn't work. They need to step up, and you need to step up and figure out that this is a serious business. If you're in it to make that billion, make that million, whatever you're in it for, make sure that you're dealing with it. It's not, Australia's brilliant in being able to convince people that you have a legitimate case. You get payment plans with the ATO, you get remission of interest, you get payment holidays. Everything is available as long as you deal with it on a timely basis. And if you stick to what you say, most of the time you get a good record with like compliance people like the Australian Tax Office or State Revenue Office, and you find that the bigger you are, you can fall back on what you've done a couple of years back, saying, look, I kept to that payment plan, I'm going to stick to this. So you just got to make sure that you're dealing with it on a timely basis. Just on reporting and clear systems. I have a few staff. They're based, probably about 20 staff in Australia, and probably about 50 staff in Sri Lanka, and a few in Vietnam and China. Now, that's because I do a lot of back office systems and SAP consulting work out of Sri Lanka. So I have to manage these people, and it's impossible. Like I have a saying, I say, if you want a problem, add a person. Because it's impossible to manage every single person, because everyone's got a different interpretation of how things are supposed to be done. Like I have checklists for everything, checklists for CityLink accounts, because I found that one of my staff had left, and 9 months later he's still using my CityLink. Right? So you've just got to make sure that you have controls in place for everything. And one of the most important things is that you have controls for your accounting. So if you don't know what's happening in your business, it's probably the worst thing you can do. You need to figure out how your reporting. A profit and loss is officially called a statement of financial performance. It's like what your lap time is for the last lap that you've done. So if you look at your P&L for a particular period, that's your lap time for that. How well did you go during that lap? And then, did you do a personal best? How does it compare to the previous lap? So you need to make sure that you're getting accurate information. I get lots of people who turn around to me saying, oh, I know how we're going because I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling too he's going under. So, so you've just got to be really, I'm really, really serious about this stuff because I went through the global financial crisis with lots of people who bought the Maseratis and the Aston Martins and everything else and then lost everything. And so it's in that situation, there's no one to help you. When NAB comes across and wants your Ferrari, they're going to get your Ferrari, right? So just make sure that you have information on a timely basis. It's moving. I had a senior developer yesterday. I was working at about 6 o'clock in the office, and he goes to me, Arj, you're always trying to grow. You're always pushing. If I was in your position, I wouldn't push. Like I'd be happy with where we're at. I'd stick there. And I said, look, if we were 30 years ago, I'd be happy with that. That would work. Now it doesn't work, right? Now it doesn't work because if I don't push, I'm not even going to be alive because it's moving so quickly. Like I'm sitting there thinking, what Jamie's talking about going online, I wish I could. I want to think about doing that for my business because that's where things are heading. I look at like bookkeeping, for example, right? We have accountants and bookkeepers in the office. I see lots of new businesses using online services for bookkeeping. So we have to evolve. So because of that, I have to keep moving. And that creates issues in reporting. I need to know where things are at. So it's important that you familiarize yourself with an accounting software. Make sure that's a suitable piece of software for you. There's QuickBooks, MYOB, Attaché, Sybase, everything's out there. But you don't need SAP, right? SAP is for AGL. They've got a billion transactions a day. What you need is something that's affordable, that's going to suit your business, whatever it may be, and seek advice. You can get something online, you can get something offline, but find something that's going to work for you. If you have an external accountant, bookkeeper, still make sure that you know how to raise invoices, you know how it's done, you know when the invoice cycle is, you know how statements go out, you know who's calling what, how your debt collection happens. You need to know this stuff. You can't let someone else do it. You can't go, oh, no, I've got a great bookkeeper, I'm going to let her do it. What happens when she gets pregnant and gets married? Yep. Right? You can't let other people deal with your business because it's like it's your proprietary interest.
Can I just ask,
yeah,
do
sure.
you start on that? I mean, I'm sitting here, I've got
Yeah.
the structures and stuff going,
Yep.
but I need to learn how to do the invoices, how to do this.
So have you started billing?
No, haven't.
Okay.
I'm just, ready to go, but
Yep.
I don't know where to go to learn all this. I mean, is there small, little courses around that provide you that sort of knowledge? Because it's quite frightening not knowing how to...
Well, it's not frightening. I make it frightening because it's
Well,
kind
no,
of
it
my
is.
job
It's
to me.
petrifying.
Look, I have this really bad saying. I'm not sure whether I should say this. I went to school for like 7 years because in Sri Lanka, your parents' love is directly equated to how many degrees you have. So I've got 4, so I'm loved a little bit, right? But what happens is, honestly, I would have stopped at 1 if I know what I know now. Because 1 gave me the skills to know how to sit there and to concentrate for like 3 hours. The other 4, you know what, you learn a few things, but all the experience is from working. So I would suggest, once you get the initial structure, start working. Make sure you have enough in the bank, working capital. The next topic is probably my favorite topic to all my clients is cash flow. I run my business on cash basis profit. I don't care what's out there. None of that means anything, right? So the simple stuff, work out what's in the bank, what you need. It's really practical. Just work out, what's in, what's out. That's where you need to start, right? None of this is extremely complicated. When you get to the stage where you have state revenue office issues, you'll have professional help, and you will have learned, right? You will have learned how it works, of course. Without a doubt, it's not hard. It's just, I'm trying to condense 10 years of learning into 30 minutes. So you go, what? But you got to be aware of it. You don't want to be I've specialized in construction and transport. and it's the coolest thing ever, because you go out there and there's these big trucks. I'm sitting out in Truck Arena yesterday, and this double semi just tips crushed rock out, and you just go, how cool is this? And I'm standing there, it's tipping out there, right? And I'm sitting with my client, and I have to tell him that he's not doing the simple things. He's bought all these trucks because he's like a big kid. He goes, Arj, let's get this. I'm like, no, let's not. But what happens is, when you have money in the account, he's exactly like this. I kid you not. Like, I can bring him in because I've become friends with them, right? But I've got to stop people from going out there and buying the trucks and doing the crazy stuff, because I cost each truck. In my business, I think I've got 54 direct revenue raising people. I work out who makes what every month. Because I'm self-funded. I don't have, someone to fall back on. If I fail in my growth, I'm in serious trouble. So it's just practical stuff. My advice is be conservative. If you're not sure, take the conservative option, always, because that will sustain you, okay? Just a few other things. Once you get going, you will use banks, you will use debtor finance, you will use short-term funding, you will use various different means of turboing your business. Like you might have vendor finance, right? What happens in these situations is you have reviews. So overdrafts get reviewed. Depending on the size of the overdraft, they get reviewed monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually. Now, reviews are quite important. So you want to make sure your banker is happy. And in banks, you can be assured your banker is going to change. Every 6 to 12 months, they will change the banker because they can. Right? So what happens is you've now built a relationship, that's over. You've got to build another one. Right? So make sure that you are prepared for these reviews and you have enough information and you understand the concept of what a review is. There's a debtor finance company, right? Debtor finance is when you have invoices out. So you've invoiced me $1 million, him $1 million, and you're not going to get that money for 90 days. These are your trading terms. So debtor finance is a type of finance where they will lend you 80% of that money upfront and charge you a rate of interest, right? It's quite a common method of finance. Now, there's an international financier called BB who do debtor finance quite well. They're a second tier. They're not a major bank in Australia. And the state manager keeps calling my business going, why don't you recommend us? And I had a call from Manchester asking me why we're not recommending. The reason I'm not recommending this product, which is a great product, is because the person who gets the product, my client, will not manage the compliance. So they will not reconcile the bank account. They will not reconcile the debtor finance account. What they will do is they'll turn around and go, oh, I've got to buy an investment property. Let me just raise an invoice to my friend and rip 80% of it out. I'll fix it in 90 days. Guaranteed, I'm going to get that money. I mean, that sort of stuff's just crazy. I mean, I can tell you 10 people who've done it, right? And 9 of them have gone bankrupt for the first time. Right? And the other one's on its way. It sounds great, but what happens is it just catches up with you. And the only people who make money is the liquidator, the lawyer, and the bank. Because the bank will sell your car, which is worth 80,000 for 50, and then chase you for the rest. Whatever's left over on the higher purchase is your responsibility, right? So you just got to be really, really careful. This stuff is really serious. So getting the compliance right, making sure your BAS statements are lodged. Work out whether you're on cash or accruals basis for BAS. If you don't know what it is, ask the question, right? Make sure you know the payment calendar and the lodgement calendar for the ATO. Let's say you're a business, you have 4 BASs, right? Work out the dates that they need to be lodged on. Make sure that you prepare for that. Put time away so that you can do your admin work. Simple things. Don't leave it a shoebox. Don't come to me with a shoebox and say, Arj, sort me out. Because they're gonna penalize $550 for each non-lodgement. You got to understand from the tax office's point of view, it's hard to chase 1,000 businesses, but it's easier to fine you for non-lodgement because that's black and white, right? The 28th is the 28th is the 28th. So if you don't lodge, putting $550 on you is fine. Chasing white-collar crime and everything else and Wickham and all this sort of stuff, that takes a lot of resources. So if, like ASIC, for example, with ASIC, they have a review for your corporate entity. And if you're late by even 2 or 3 days, they charge you $65. Your fee is $218. they're charging you almost a third of your fee as a late penalty. So if you have a corporate structure with 27 companies and you're late on your ASIC payments, you end up paying like $4,500. So you have to be really, really careful. Information, it's great for compliance, but it's also very useful for the growth of your business. Something that's important to me is the attrition rate in what I do. So I run what's like a little BPO, which is a process outsourcing operation, and I can go out there, sell, and get the business, but what if I'm losing a lot of the business at the back end? Are we doing that intentionally because we want to lose the smaller clients, or is that because we're not servicing them properly? That information is vital for me, so I look at that on a monthly basis. It's important that you work out what your key indicators are for your business, and then make sure that you have that information clearly outlined. Costings are very, very important. So you may be in the garden supply business. You may be costing particular jobs. And you may forget that you have an overhead component. You may have a general manager. You may have office staff. You may have rent. You've got to cost that component. From large companies to small, they make these mistakes. So if you get the correct advice and you're aware of the fact that these things need to be looked at, that's very, very important. Okay. The third section is cash flow. When you start off, lots of people come up to me and tell me, Arj, I've got that job. We're going to cover this, no problems. I've got these 3 tenders coming up. We're gonna be fine. They also tell me about all the great marketing ideas they have in the future. So everything's going to be okay with this temporary overdraft that they want me to get for them, right? None of that's useless. The best businesses I know have enough working capital to sustain them for 6 months. Plus, they have enough provisions so that if anything ever went wrong, they have something to fall back on. The business has to sustain itself. So what's important? Profit and losses are great. Invoices, debtors are great. Turnover is great. What's more important is what is banked, right? Cash flow, cash is king. So one of the worst things you can do is go beyond what your resources are. I tend to do this. I get more clients than I can service with 20 people. So I'm always chasing. I'm working the weekends, I'm working the Sundays and everything else. I can work that out now, but it's not sustainable for me in the future. So it's always learning to pull back a bit and going, okay, capacity planning. In IT, you do capacity planning or load balancing. It's for servers. We capacity plan in a big way. So you need to work out what your capacity is and whether you can handle the volume of work that's going to come your way. If it's an internet business, if you're doing a service, however you're doing it, just make sure you know what your capacity is. It's important to know the difference between a profit and loss statement and a cash flow statement. A P&L shows you a performance based on money that's not being banked and expenses that may not be paid and have not been paid. But a cash flow shows you what's coming in and what's going out. When you're a small business, it's advisable to be an expert on cash flow, because cash flow is where, honestly, if there's any chance of anything going wrong, is cash flow. Because if you do not have the cash to sustain your growth, or to sustain that little step, or to sustain the non-payment of your largest invoice by your customer who just declared bankruptcy, you're going to be in serious trouble. Right? So it's important that you plan. All of this information is available online, and in reference to having a short course, I'm probably inclined to say trying something is probably the best thing. But each their own. There's courses available. I know that OLA have courses, and there's a few different outlets that you can find out information. The ATO is brilliant. They give you free information on everything. As soon as you register your company, they call you. They ask you how you are and how everything's going. So if you've registered 20, they call you 20 times, right? So you got to listen to them because you don't want to piss them off, right? A couple of things that I do that might be helpful. I sell manpower. I have to find a computer and a chair and a table and a training program for a staff member in Sri Lanka. It cost me $1,000 per seat just to set them up. Then cost me another $3,000 to train them because they don't make any money for the first couple of months. Now, every time I get 30 staff, I've got to work out how am I going to fund that capital expense. So I do a cash flow cycle, which is work out, okay, we are going to have a jump in terms of staffing or capex during this month. We've got to work towards that. So we work out our collections and work out what our capital expenses and do a chart, an Excel spreadsheet, ins and outs, ins and outs. Then from there, I work out where am I short and then work out what the numbers are. In the future, for example, in April, I'm not sure what I'm going to collect. I have a rough idea about what I'm invoicing. But yesterday, for example, one of my clients, he declared bankruptcy and he was trading insolvent for, probably 6 weeks. So he's never going to pay. So how do I account for that? Well, if I have $500,000 worth of invoices and my collection rate is, I would never assume that I'd collect all of it. I'd assume I'd collect 70% straight away. So I discount what we collect. I'm quite harsh in how I do it. It depends on different industries. Accountants struggle because our terms are dragged out. But certain industries like construction would be the same. So you have to work out what your cash flows are. Depending on the industry, you might have issues with seasonal changes, rain, sunshine. Retail, for example, like house stores have a problem with the retail market dying. They struggle with cash flow and they need heaps of stock and they have to keep their stores completely full of stock, but they're not selling the same rate that they were maybe 2 or 3 years ago. If you have, let's say, a capital expense, you can call up your suppliers and negotiate. You can call up suppliers and say, look, this month I'm going to defer to next month. We've had a relationship for 3 years. Most people are fine with that as long as you keep to your word. I find that if you pay people when you tell them you're going to pay them, that's fine. All right? But if you tell them that you're going to pay them next week and you don't do it, they're going to think, look, he's never going to pay. And you create a name for yourself that it's not easy to deal with you. And people don't want to deal with you. So for me, however big the carrot is, I've learned my lesson. I'm not interested unless I'm getting paid. Because I'm not going to put the yards in and work hard just to go home and go, oh, that's great, accounts receivable. It's pointless. So make sure that your business has a model around collections and you know what this model is. Also, build strategies that can maximize cash flow. Establish clear payment terms. Your terms and conditions are very, very important. So when you're setting stuff up, we have what's called a letter of engagement. So if you're an accounting client, you sign a letter of engagement. You can tighten your terms and conditions so that you're protected later on. Also, you can ask for you can give discounts or prepayment. If someone pays upfront for anything, you get a prepayment discount. If it's a large invoice, ask for a deposit. If it goes against industry norm, I don't really see a problem in still asking, because you can explain to people saying, look, the world's changed and the world has changed. You need to protect yourself because you need to have a sustainable business. Deposit checks, simple things. When you get your checks, deposit them. Don't leave them lying around. Deposit them daily. If you have to, just get out there and put the money in the bank. It's important because you want to make sure that your cash is coming in and depositing them. And if someone's going to bounce a check on you, you'd rather know today than 3 weeks later. Right? So deposit checks. Make sure you call people up, SMS them saying, money, please, now. Right? All that sort of stuff. Right? I have a very close relationship with my clients, so I can say stuff like that and I get away with it. Depends on your clients. Use leasing and things like leasing. Instead of going and buying your X5 for cash, make sure you lease it. Use the finance structures that are available to you. Research. Online, you get everything. My rate, all that sort of stuff's available. If you just get on that, you'll be able to get the information. Have credit limits for customers. Make sure you're quite strict with them. I know it's hard when you're small because people just tell you, oh, look, we're going to give you this amount of work. Well, you haven't yet. You're coming to me because I'm good enough. I do the job really well. If I wasn't doing my job, you wouldn't come here. I'm not selling on the fact that you're coming here because I'm doing the job at a fair price. So make sure that you provide me with the tools to be sustainable. So don't, be very, very careful. If you've got a slow payer or their history is bad, make sure they pay their account before you give them any more. Don't drag them on. Your credit terms universally are your credit terms. It doesn't matter whether your client is BHP or me. Make sure the credit terms are strict. I like to keep all my key indicators on cash basis. I kind of think, for me, cash is king. So everything's on cash basis. I cost everything, even bonuses are paid on cash basis, taking into consideration every possible variable. That's because I love Excel, but you've got to figure out what works for you. Just seek advice. Ask people. I always listen to what other people are doing, and just figure out what suits your business. Because you'll never get the exact model that's perfect, but by looking at what other people are doing, you will figure out what's going to work for your business. That's probably the best thing to do. And that's it. Thanks.